Private images from a lost world of communism in Eastern Europe. The communists claimed they were building a socialist paradise. Most people think they created hell on earth. But what was life really like for the people of Eastern Europe, effectively imprisoned behind the Iron Curtain? The answers are sometimes surprising. While some cannot forget the abnormality of those times, others feel that they led perfectly ordinary lives. This series, through rarely seen archive and personal testimony, captures the real lives of those living under communist rule. It was a way of life that disappeared when communism collapsed across Eastern Europe 2 decades ago. East Germany was socialism's showcase state. One of its iconic faces was a children's TV puppet called Sandman. He was designed to send East Germany's children happy to bed and to win their hearts for socialism.
It simply had to reflect life in East Germany. It had to transmit class consciousness and feelings of solidarity.
The Sandman was made by people who used to live under socialism. They had a vision of socialism and communism and were happy to spread that vision, namely the vision of a better world, a more just world.
And East Germany's role model for that better world was the Sandman's favorite holiday destination, the Soviet Union. East Germany was born out of the ruins of the Second World War. It would emerge from the Soviet zone of occupation established with the total defeat of Nazi Germany. Everywhere, symbols of the Soviet Union and images of its leader, Joseph Stalin, showed where the real power now lay. In the summer of 1945, 14-year-old schoolgirl Erika Riemann went back to her old school in the company of friends. A day she would never forget.
Wo früher Adolf Hitler hing jetzt das Bild von.
We saw that Hitler's portrait had been replaced with Stalin's.
Ich bin an das Bild gegangen und habe dann da eine Schleife den Bart gemalt.
So I drew a bow with some lipstick on Stalin's moustache.
Das war ein Streich,
because when I saw his portrait, I thought he looked sad. That wasn't a good move. I never wanted to be an artist again in my whole life.
Das Leben nie wieder machen.
Erika was sentenced to 10 years in prison, part of which she spent at the former Nazi concentration camp at Sachsenhausen. Here she was subjected to a mock execution.
Und dann kamen wir dann in
We had to go into a shower room.
Und da wurde also dann gesagt, dass sie das jetzt mit uns.
They told us they would do the same things they had done to the Jews, that there wouldn't be water coming out of the showers but gas.
Und das war auch eine.
That was a very terrifying situation.
Fürchterliche Situation. Es war schon eine richtig.
There was great panic and then great relief when only warm water came out.
Wasser kam. War eine Verlegung, war ich in Torgau.
I spent time in the fortress at Torgau. where many women were raped. I hadn't been raped yet, but the decision had been made that I'd be next.
Still only a child, Erika suffered repeated physical and sexual abuse, like this episode in Torgau prison.
It's affected my whole life. I hadn't had any sexual experience at the time. But I had to take all my clothes off and to sit on a bowl which was pushed down the stairs amongst all the men's baying. I can't talk about it. I've felt the repercussions till this day. I felt ashamed and dirty. I'm a mother and a grandmother, but after all these years, it still remains, and I still feel dirty and degraded. It's very hard to endure such things when you're that young.
Over 150,000 Germans were detained by the communists in special camps like Sachsenhausen. Almost a third of them died in captivity.
In August
1952, 80,000 young pioneers were invited to Dresden because we, the children, had to carry on socialism.
Denn wir sind diejenigen, die das dann perspektivisch weiterführen sollen.
At the age of 12, I was proud to attend the first pioneer meeting in Dresden.
Dresden zu diesem ersten Pioniertreffen zu gehen. Wissen wir?
We knew about the Hitler Youth during the Third Reich, that they also wore neckties and played drums and trumpets. They wore uniforms.
Uniformen.
When the pioneer organization was founded, many adults were opposed because it reminded them of the Hitler regime.
Das ist ja schon wieder bei Hitler.
So parents said that's not going to happen to our children, not again. But my father was a teacher, and so he had the task of recruiting children for the pioneer organizations.
The pioneers served the newly formed workers' and peasants' state of East Germany, a one-party dictatorship modelled on the Soviet Union. Its propaganda stressed the dangers from Western imperialism, including the bizarre claim that America was dropping plagues of Colorado beetles from the air to destroy socialist crops.
Nur Kartoffelacker, und so haben wir diese Kartoffelkäfer gesammelt und jetzt erzählt.
They would praise us for having collected those beetles.
Diesen Kartoffelkäfer abgeworfen haben. Und
The very same American aeroplanes that had bombed Dresden, they would tell us, had also unleashed those beetles.
es wird wiederum erzählt, Flugzeuge, die Dresden zerbombt haben, sind auch diejenigen,
Evil American imperialism.
der böse amerikanische Imperialismus. Und wir Kinder machen jetzt das Gelöbnis.
We made our first pioneer vow in Dresden. We children vowed that we would do anything to avoid such a terrible and evil war in the future.
Wir 80.000 Kinder in den
80,000 children together said, that we promise.
Und für mich nehme ich diese Botschaft
And I made that vow not with my mind, but with my heart.
mit dem Herzen mit, vom Gefühl her. Stalin war der große Held.
Stalin was the great hero. He was a god to us. Stalin the intelligent, Stalin the wise.
Stalin der Weise. Und Stalin ist derjenige,
Stalin was the representative of the free world of socialism, and he was our role model.
freie Welt des Sozialismus, ja, dass man sich schadet.
We would follow him unconditionally.
Ihm werden wir bedingungslos folgen.
Wir grüßen die Heimat im Alt und Fett, wir wollen sie schützen und hegen. Wir reichen die Kinder der ganzen Welt die Hand zur Freundschaft entgegen. Der schönste Gruß unserer Republik gilt Josef, Stalin und Wilhelm Pieck. Wir grüßen als Kinder der neuen Zeit, Pioniere sind immer bereit. Wir lieben.
It was the high point for Stalinism in East Germany, and a dangerous time for those not singing the party's tune. Ursula Rumin was a dancer in revue and cabaret. By 1952, she'd landed a job as a scriptwriter with a state-owned film company, DEFA.
I had a contract with DEFA on a movie called The Destinies of Women.
Das war also eine Geschichte.
The story was about women in East Berlin and women in West Berlin. The women in the East would be politically orientated and organized.
Und politisch ausgerichtet, und in West-Berlin waren das nur
Those in West Berlin would only be little dolls who cared about nothing but jewelry and fashion.
Und
obviously, the East Berlin authorities wanted to show that life was good only in the East, and everything in the West was corrupt.
Und im Westen ist alles tant.
The Destinies of Women, filmed on the streets of East Berlin, was released in 1952. The regime wanted such films to help build socialism, and Ursula's employers now wanted her to become a communist.
The chief scriptwriter asked me why I wasn't a member of the party.
Berlin was then the espionage capital of the world. And for those like Ursula living and working on this front line of the Cold War, East Germany could be a lawless place.
Einfahrender Zug nach Potsdam, über Friedrichstraße Westkreuz nach Potsdam.
Ich fuhr zur Friedrichstraße, ich wurde an der Friedrichstraße.
I went to the Friedrichstraße. There, two gentlemen addressed me by name, inviting me to get into their car, telling me that they would take me to my work at DEFA. We drove very fast for quite a while. I was a bit surprised by this because my office wasn't that far away. I'd been kidnapped and nobody knew.
Protesting her innocence, Ursula was sentenced to 15 years hard labor for espionage by military court and transported almost 2,000 miles away to a labor camp in Vorkuta, Siberia.
We were close to the Polar Sea. There was a wind with ice crystals.
The
summer was almost worse. The tundra around Vorkuta was a marshland. There were hordes of mosquitoes. To work in 45 degrees centigrade heat, without sun protection, without water for 12 hours every day.
From 1945 onwards, tens of thousands were sent from eastern Germany to Siberia, many of them never to return. Ursula, one of the lucky ones, was released in 1954, still protesting her innocence. Only years later would she reveal that she had in fact worked for British intelligence since before her arrival in Berlin.
I would do errands for the English. I worked as a courier. In retrospect, it seems very naive. I don't understand how I could have been that stupid.
6 months after Ursula's kidnap, on the 17th of June 1953, the workers rose up against the workers' and peasant state. What had begun as a strike amongst construction workers over pay soon turned into wider demands for free elections and the resignation of the government itself. By late morning, Soviet troops stationed in East Germany had to intervene.
At 11:30 we heard the tanks, the chains of the tanks. Then we realized the Russians were coming. The crowd started howling. And when the people at the end of the demonstration refused to give way, the soldiers fired in the air. And when you hear gunfire, you start running automatically.
Dann rennen sie automatisch.
Horst Krieter, a Berlin petrol pump attendant, was in the thick of the action that day.
Ich weiß noch, rechts von dem Marx-Engels-Platz stand ein...
We threw stones at the tanks.
Wir konnten ja immer in diese Trümmer verschwinden.
Seeing the tanks firing in your direction, the sheer sound of it causes you to piss in your pants.
Und der schießt. Bei uns auf den
Someone had died on the Marx Engels Square that day.
Zu Tode kommt, der wahrscheinlich überfahren worden.
He was run over by a tank.
Ausgang des Marx-Engels-Platz war.
There was a blanket and a wooden cross which said "Murdered by the Soviet Army."
Und da stand schon drauf, von den Sowjets ermordet. Für mich ist das ein Ehrentag.
It was a day of glory for me. We showed them what could be done. The police could do nothing. The government could do nothing. The secret police, the Stasi, could do nothing.
Over 50 civilians were killed that day. In the clampdown that followed, more than 20,000 were arrested, scores were executed. The country's leaders had been caught off guard. From now on, security and the control of the people would be the government's overriding concern. The people themselves were concerned about simply getting by. The 1950s were austere times, and food and goods were in limited supply. Families and organizations in West Germany sent aid packages to the east.
We were so happy and surprised as we lived such a frugal life. When the package arrived, we couldn't believe our eyes. The wrapping was so attractive and colorful, and we'd never seen anything like this. Roland, the youngest, couldn't open the presents fast enough, helping Wolfgang beaming at his discoveries.
Mein Vater hatte also 1954.
In 1954, my father received the 8mm camera AK8. These are the first films he recorded at Christmas.
1954, hier sieht man. Und der Kleine.
I'm the baby, 18 months old. That's his self-made gramophone. We lived in Berlin in Karlshorst, which was under Soviet occupation. Only state functionaries and those employed in ministries were allowed to live there. My father worked in television as a cameraman. He was, of course, a member of the party, but he wasn't totally convinced about it. My mother's wearing a necklace. Of course, that's only for the film. Now she's trying out the new vacuum cleaner.
Omega hieß der.
It's called the Omega.
Der wurde ungefähr so fast 20 Jahre produziert.
It was East Germany's people's vacuum cleaner.
Der Volksstaubsauger in der DDR. Oder wenn wir mit der Schulklasse in Berlin-Karlshorst noch 1960.
In 1960, Khrushchev came to East Germany.
Die DDR. Und da sind die auf der Rückfahrt zum Flughafen Schönefeld.
When he passed through Karlshorst on his way to the airport, my class and I had to wave.
Und erst viel später, wo ich mal die Bilder mal...
Only much later, when I developed the film and got it back home, I realized I'd waved at Erich Mielke, the head of the Stasi, who was sitting next to the driver.
Der saß nämlich vorne neben dem Fahrer. Also in den 50er Jahren war man natürlich im Westen.
In the 1950s, people had few creature comforts.
Man hatte sich also für jedes gefreut, was nicht jeden Tag gab.
We were happy when we got hold of goods which weren't available every day, like bananas, which we bought in the West. Before 1961, it was still possible to drive into West Berlin.
Nach West Berlin fahren.
On August the 13th, 1961, construction began on the Berlin Wall. East Germany called it an anti-fascist protective wall designed to keep the West out. In fact, it was built to lock East Germans inside their socialist paradise. Around 3 million of them had already fled to the West, threatening the very existence of East Germany. One of those preventing people from escaping was Hagen Koch, the young pioneer at Dresden, who was now a member of the expanding Ministry of State Security, known as the Stasi.
In the afternoon, we reached the border crossing at Checkpoint Charlie. I was ordered to paint a thick white line on the street at that border crossing point. I stood with one leg in the west and the other in the east, and my assignment was to show the evil, and I repeat, evil people in the west, so far and no further. Capitalism is over there, and here is socialism. I painted that line and was still firmly convinced that that border would avoid a Third World War and help to maintain peace. Many people were against it. I was not the only person who was for it.
Growing up behind the wall were these schoolchildren in the village of Golzow. They were about to become the subject of a long-term television project. Winfried Jerschel was the youngest child in his class.
They built a new rural school, brand new and impressive. It was an East German film, and an East German film was always a propaganda film. They obviously wanted to communicate the message that a small village has a brand new school and all the children are happy. I remember that the questions at school became more probing, such as what does the Sandman look like? They wanted to see what programs we were watching at home. During the early years, they imprisoned people when they watched television from the West. Our antenna was always pointed towards the west. The teacher tried to find out if people were watching television from the west.
East Germany was an atheist state, but Marie-Louise came from a religious family.
We were 6 children, and my parents worked on the collective farm. I was a Protestant. I wasn't one of the young pioneers who all wore the same neckerchief. Nevertheless, I was allowed to sing in the choir. I wore my private clothes. We were made to feel that religion had no place at school.
Winfried wanted to be an inventor and was of a practical, inquiring nature.
We learned a lot about the political theories of Marx and Lenin. Once I asked my teacher, when does the real communism start? Real communism without money. The teacher was obviously as smart as I was and said that we would succeed in trading without money sometime after the millennium. As an ignorant child, I thought that's fantastic.
On that path from socialism to the communist millennium lay East Germany's version of the swinging 60s. Singers like Frank Scherbel, dubbed East Germany's Cliff Richard, were sometimes told by the party what to sing.
At the time, I was in the army, and there was a song, Girl in Front of the Barrack Gate, Will You Wait For Me, and I'll Ask You to Go Out With Me Today, which I hadn't sung because it was too stupid. I feared for my career because I didn't know what kind of songs they would make me sing. Because I didn't sing Girl in Front of the Barrack Gate, I was demoted and had to spend 2 days in prison.
Ich wurde degradiert, Schulterstücke abgerissen.
This musical, a kind of East Side Story, starring Frank, was officially sanctioned.
Ich glaube, dass
It was the party that decided to create a distraction for the people. They took West Side Story as their model.
Frank's co-star and then wife, Chris Dirk, misses much about East Germany.
Art and culture had a much higher value placed on them. In East Germany, singers weren't a commodity. Today, singers are a commodity that has to be bought and sold. There are many things I miss.
Chris Dirk enjoyed socialist life behind the wall.
Ja, und ich habe wirklich nicht schlecht gelebt.
I didn't lead a bad life, and I have to say that the Berlin Wall didn't really disturb me.
Das macht mich manchmal sehr sauer.
And it makes me angry when East Germany is often reduced to Stasi and I don't know what. Sometimes I have a feeling that they think we lived in clay huts.
Gelebt und sind in Sack und Asche gegangen.
Du hast ja ein Ziel vor den Augen.
Most East Germans, like Jürgen Hartwig, the baby in the 1950s home movies, conform to what the state required of them. Here he attends his Jugendweihe, a secular coming-of-age ceremony for 14-year-olds introduced by the communists. Despite appearances, however, Jürgen was no communist.
I was actually West-orientated. I was interested in beat music. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones. It was clear I wasn't a socialistically orientated person who would wear a blue shirt for the free German youth. I started wondering how to make it to the West. I tried to escape through Hungary in 1973, but things went wrong and I was sent to prison for 2 years.
By the late 1970s, disillusion with the reality of life in East Germany was spreading.
This is my farewell video. I was 19, had just passed my A-levels and going into military service. It was a real rite of passage. This is my room in Dresden, in my parents' house. All the posters of my ideals, my dreams, all these were shattered.
Learning the truth about the Warsaw Pact's invasion of Czechoslovakia, which had happened a decade earlier, was a defining moment.
This is footage from East German TV of some of our tanks, like the ones that advanced into Czechoslovakia in 1968. I actually remember being there, aged 10, looking at the tanks leaving for Prague, and I remember winking at one of the soldiers. But when I joined the army, I realized what they had done, and I felt angry and betrayed.
Such feelings could only be expressed privately. The public face of East Germany promoted the economic and scientific achievements of real existing socialism.
Space exploration and the achievements of the Soviet cosmonauts were reflected in the Sandman. They had something to do with the belief in progress. It was believed that communism would also be established in space. Obviously, it was used to make socialism appear victorious.
Kinder in der Deutschen Demokratischen Republik. Vor nicht allzu langer Zeit hat der Sandmann bei uns festgemacht mit einer Spezialrakete.
The day before that space mission, former Golzo schoolgirl Marie-Louise married Stefan, an army pilot and party member. Despite her religious background, She is committed to the workers' and peasant state.
I thought of East Germany as my country. I definitely felt at home there. Actually, even today, I still remain an East German.
By now, Marie-Louise was bringing up a family. She felt part of the appeal of East Germany lay in its support for women, especially mothers. She liked the emphasis on childcare facilities, on women's economic independence and professional opportunities.
Wir hatten eigentlich viele Rechte als Frau im Osten.
Women had many rights there.
Als Frau in der DDR,
being a woman in East Germany was good. I have good memories.
Die hatten es zum Teil leichter als heute.
It was easier than today, for example.
Dass man auf jeden Fall nie
You had the certainty that even if you were a single mother, you would never have ended up sitting in a flat without heating or worrying about your electricity bills. We felt secure and looked after.
The more I see you. East Germany's idea of looking after its citizens also involved spying on them. No act was too intimate to be observed, and no other country in history has spied on its citizens as East Germany has, with 1 in 6 of its population informing on the rest. High up on the watch list of the state's enemies was the emerging punk rock movement.
And so it goes.
All I wanted was to have a bit of fun, but the state obviously saw it differently. We were criminalized, we were politicized.
Chaos was the lead singer in a punk rock band called Wuttenfall, meaning fit of rage. His best friend Zappa was the bass guitarist. What Chaos didn't know was that his best friend was a Stasi informer.
My code name was Captain. They gave me a phone number, and when I called, I was to say Captain speaking.
Zappa had succumbed to persistent Stasi pressure for information about the punks he knew, and signed an agreement with the secret police.
The Stasi dictated to me a 2-page text full of that gibberish, saying, "I swear not to undertake anything against socialism, and I will work with the Ministry of State Security." I simply thought that I'd sign it, and then they'd let me go, and I'd be done with it. But they had that lousy signature of mine. So they continued to approach me and say, "You've signed it, so now you can tell us when the concerts are." And I had to sit around at the Stasi building for hours and hours. I said, "Okay, I will inform you when the concerts take place."
I didn't expect it to be so drastic for me. By the end, there were 9 informers set on me.
They was. In return, I had to swear that I would vote in the next elections.
Chaos only found out about his best friend's treachery after the wall came down, when he read his Stasi file.
I felt great disappointment at my friend's behavior, especially because of the breach of trust.
It was a mistake. It was a horrible year. I was at the mercy of the Stasi.
Krieger has a best of 20 meters and 71.
Heidi Krieger's life was also dramatically affected by the Stasi. Heidi was one of communism's star athletes. Here she is seen winning gold in the shot at the European Championships in 1986.
The German Democratic Republic, 21 meters.
I loved being a sporting champion for East Germany. I liked representing my country abroad.
Einfach weil ich in meinem kleinbürgerlichen Denken...
Simply because my narrow-mindedness would make me believe, with our achievements, we strengthened the Socialist Republic.
Die sozialistische Republik.
But Heidi paid a heavy price for her sporting success. Unwittingly, Heidi was one of 10,000 East German athletes who were part of a Stasi-run doping program.
Und irgendwann war es so, dass also der Trainer mir auch so...
At one point, shortly after I'd turned 16, the coach suddenly started giving me packs of pills.
Das sind unterstützende Mittel. Die nimmt jeder.
He would tell me, these are to help you, everyone takes them. You'll handle the training program better, you won't get ill, and if you're injured, you'll recover more quickly. I trusted him and started taking those pills. There are teenagers whose sexuality hasn't been fixed yet during adolescence, and probably I was in that situation. I was neither fish nor fowl. In that period, they gave me those pills. Because of the pills, my balance switched over to the masculine side.
Massive doses of anabolic steroids over several years changed Heidi's body forever.
I realized they'd made a lab rat out of me because they saw my potential. East Germany has taken my life away from me, and without asking. I wasn't allowed to decide for myself what I wanted to become.
The effects of the doping system finally forced Heidi to undergo a sex change operation. And today, Heidi is called Andreas.
Heidi
still exists.
Ein Stückchen Heidi bin ich immer noch.
I'm still a bit Heidi. That is my life. I used to be a woman, and I'll probably always remain a woman up to a certain extent.
The man ultimately in charge of East Germany's doping program was Stasi leader Erich Mielke, filmed here on a hunt. This is the Schorfheide. The Kaiser hunted here. Nazi leaders hunted here. And hunting here was a way of life for some Politburo members, a time when important business was done.
We usually went hunting on Tuesdays after the Politburo meeting.
Mielke was an enthusiastic but inaccurate hunter.
Mielke had specific ideas about hunting because he wasn't a very good shot. The forester who went with him had to intervene and shoot the prey to try and make him look successful at least once during the hunt.
Stasi officer Bernd Bruckner was party leader Erich Honecker's bodyguard. His boss was addicted to hunting.
Auch hier war zielstrebig, nahm sich etwas vor.
Honecker was determined. It might have rained cats and dogs or even snowed, and he would still want to go hunting with his fur hat on.
Auf unsere guten, treuen, zuverlässigen Yachthelfer, unsere Genossen des Bezirkes Erfurt, die hier angetreten sind, ein dreifaches Heute! 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 Die Staatsjagd ist beendet.
Animals had to be imported from other Eastern Bloc countries like Hungary because they'd killed so many.
Und da wurde das dann zeitweise schon überschreitet.
They overdid it. From time to time they didn't respect the hunting restrictions on certain game.
Sondern dass dann auch zeitweise
they shot everything. That was too much.
Hallo!